I plan to do this challenge on Bloons Tower Defense. Basically, if I die, the video ends. Pretty self-explanatory from just the title and thumbnail. Well, first, let's look for a map. This one looks relatively okay. And I guess I'll go on easy, just because, I don't know, I'm kind of afraid of doing medium. Actually, you know what? Let's do medium. Mama didn't raise no bitch. Alright guys, so we are starting. This is kind of different from what I'm used to doing, honestly, not gonna lie, so I kind of don't know what to really talk about. I'm not really used to this sort of gaming commentary, so I do have something that I want to talk about though, and that is just like the lack of uploads, I guess. I guess this is a perfect time to kind of talk about that, because the last video I did was a update video where I was just kind of talking about stuff that kind of stopped me from uploading and why I've been demotivated to even record in the first place. Well, actually, let me take that back. I've recorded various videos over the past time that I've been gone from YouTube, believe it or not, ranging from commentary videos and even just gaming in general. So something similar to this, to be honest. I'm always at that point where, I'm editing and then I just feel like I messed up somewhere in the video and I end up just completely trashing the entire video and getting rid of it. I scrap it. And that's something that I hate. That not just in terms of content creation, but just in general. I always sort of want to do everything perfect, and that comes at a cost of if I mess up in a little area or an aspect of something, I just scrap everything and take a while to start again, to be honest. Yeah, a bunch of videos that have never seen the light of day I just end up scrapping, and if I don't scrap them, I just have them on my hard drive and just don't ever take the time to edit them. So I don't want to make this video too boring and just talk about why I've been kind of lacking, to be honest. Seems kind of boring to be listening to that, just ranting about why I've been, not uploading. So actually, for this video, since I know that it's my first video in a long time and I doubt it'll do good or be pushed or anything, I kind of like to start off or continue with something that I've been meaning to do on the channel since a long time ago, and that was to do more story times. So if you actually look back on my older content, I did used to do story times, but they were, I don't want to say, no, they were pretty bad actually. They were terrible, whether that was audio quality or just me relying on my memory instead of actually taking the time and typing out the specific aspects of the story to kind of get the facts straight. And so I don't remember how many story times I ever did on the channel. It's got to be at least less than 10 though. But yeah, those story time videos are kind of shitty, so I like to kind of continue with them. If I have the option to, I'd like to be able to just redo them in a way, whether it be in these sorts of videos where I'm doing a gaming sort of video, or just their own separate storytime video. But I think for those, I'll probably try and do story times that I feel are more important, or just story times that I feel like I can tell or talk about more. Yeah, so I guess this story time will be about my shitty 6th grade teacher. For this story time, I'm not gonna obviously say or mention people's real names, just because I don't know, I don't even think that's right. So I think for this story time, I'll call the teacher Miss Helson. And what's funny enough is that this was actually the same nickname that a bunch of students actually gave this name to her. So her name rhymed with Miss Helson, but obviously, yeah, I'm not gonna say her real name. Alright, so continuing with the story. This story isn't exactly about my experience, because my experience with her was very limited, to be honest. The thing about her is that she was a very old school type of teacher, and pretty much the way she ran her class was, just by looking at her seating format just kind of shows you how much of a boomer she was. So basically, this point is pretty significant to the story, but basically the way she seated her class was dependent on how you actually performed in class. So I remember at the end of the week, we would get our journals checked, and she taught English and history, so there was a lot of writing in her class that we had to do. And pretty much on Fridays, she would check our journals to see just how much work we'd done and if we even did any, if we completed it. And she had separate tables, and there were a total of, I believe, 6 or 8, and the top tables would have the students that did their work, were always on top of assignments, were doing good on exams, that sort of deal. And pretty much it would dribble down, so like the average students would sit in the middle sections and the worst students would be in the lower tables. And so that pretty much just goes to show how she ran her school or her class. And so besides just her seating chart, she was actually very, very strict on certain stuff about how we did our work and our assignments. So for her class, she required every single piece of work to be written in pen, had to be black or blue, and then also she made it mandatory to write in cursive, which was, I don't want to say it was difficult, because after the first 2 weeks of 6th grade, you kind of just got used to it. So the first 2 weeks were just basically getting used to cursive writing, specifically in her English class. And so after the first 2-3 weeks of class, you kind of just got used to it. So that wasn't much of a hassle, but it was kind of annoying because, you know, for your other classes, you were writing regular letters, and then all of a sudden you got to transition to cursive. So yeah, just boomer mentality type of vibes. And so, like I said, specifically for me, I was a pretty average student. You know, I did my work, I kept up in class. I wasn't like the highest, because I would always sit towards the average tables, and towards the end of the school year I would actually move up into the higher tables. I don't know why I say levels. But yeah, I would move up into the higher tables. And so actually one moment that I recall from her class where I was actually in trouble was when during the first few days of school, I kind of already got the vibe that she was kind of a strict teacher. And so I don't know, for some reason I was just in my own world playing with my pens, and I remember she yelled at me, specifically me, because like everyone was reading. And that's another thing I want to point out, is that basically for her English class specifically, we would have to bring in a book, had to be a chapter book, and we would have to be reading that for the first like 10-20 minutes of class. And so I remember the first 2 weeks I didn't bring a book, because at that point I didn't have a library card, and don't ask me why I didn't have one. I just was kind of putting it off to even check out a book. Like, I could have had the option to check out a book from the school library, but I just kept putting it off. And so if we didn't have a library book, we would just be either practicing our cursive writing in the first few weeks of school. And like I said, I didn't have a book, so I was just writing cursive, practicing, and eventually I just got bored or something, and I was just playing with my pens, and she pretty much yelled at me in front of the entire class. Like, she called me up to the front, to her desk, and she just was berating me about, like, I forget what, but like telling me how I don't even bring a book, so what gives me the right to be playing in her class, that sort of deal. And it was kind of embarrassing, especially because it was the first few days of school, and yeah, just kind of, I guess, pushed me to try not to get on her bad side and stuff, which I thankfully did not. I was able to learn from my mistakes. This story time specifically, I want to focus on a kid that kind of feel sorry for, I'm not gonna lie, because it's not really his, well, I don't want to say it's not his fault, but I just felt like he kind of was going through a lot. And for this story time, I'll call him Pete. And so Pete was a bit of a strange individual, because he was kind of an outcast. Even I didn't even know him, and since it was middle school, you transition from elementary school to middle school, so it's, you know, brand new faces. But even just like the vibe that he gave off, you kind of already knew he was a social outcast. Like, I remember there were times where he would show up to class without a backpack, and the days that he would show up to school with a backpack, sometimes he didn't even carry a notebook or like a pen, which was a pen or a pencil, like no school supplies or anything. And, you know, looking back now, I kind of feel sorry for the kid, because I don't know what kind of things he was going through, like whether there were some issues going at home, I'm not sure. But being that the issue that he wasn't, you know, coming to school prepared, that brought a lot of problems during the school year, especially with a teacher like her. So basically throughout the school year, I remember there were various instances where Miss Helson would like kick this kid out, and specifically in the first couple of months of school, like, she would just berate this kid for every single little thing. I mean, to be fair, it was kind of warranted. Like, the kid didn't do his work, and even when kids around him would give him like paper and something to write with, like even then he'd like struggle to even do any sort of work. I mean, he wasn't like causing issues in class, like he wasn't talking back to the teacher. He just kind of took when he was getting yelled at, he just kind of took it, you know. He didn't talk back to the teacher. Actually, I remember on multiple cases him crying and being sent out of class, and if he wasn't sent out of class, he was sent back to his seat, or he was separated from the other tables and just crying, which it's kind of fucked up looking back, because like no one spoke out about it, and it was kind of difficult to even speak against it, because I mean, sure, the kid wasn't doing his work, but at the same time, like, he was constantly getting yelled at. I'm surprised he didn't like request to change teacher. I'm pretty sure he could have changed teacher, or at that point probably just changed school or something, I don't know. But pretty much most of the school year was just Pete and him, you know, getting sent out of class, and either that or just being sent away from the other tables. And you know, the rest of the class didn't really do much besides just kind of stare when he was getting yelled at, and once he was kicked out or separated from the other students, we just kind of minded our own business and didn't really say anything. He was pretty much in a pretty difficult situation, and it didn't really help the fact that he was a social outcast. Like I said, pretty much he just kind of gave the vibe that he was kind of different from other students, and towards the end of the school year is when he actually started to make friends with other students. I know this sounds fucked up to say, but like, they're not weirdos, but they're also kind of in the same boat as him, kind of just like outcasts, I guess. And him and a bunch of these types of students would just hang out, and you know, I'm glad that he found friends, but still, he did kind of have to go through some bullshit with that teacher specifically. I'm not sure how his other teachers were. I'm pretty sure they were a little bit more lenient. And I do recall another instance where Pete was caught sleeping in class. And like I said, all these examples of him not showing up to school with supplies or a backpack and sleeping in class kind of just shows like the kind of living environment he was going through. Or maybe I'm entirely wrong, and maybe he was okay in his living situation in home. But during this instance where he was caught sleeping, I remember, and the reason why I have it engraved in my mind is because it was like crazy. Like, basically Pete was sleeping in his class, and because it was since I had this teacher for history and English, both periods were pretty much like after one class finished, you would continue on to the next. So pretty much I had her for like an hour and a half or something like that. And so basically, Pete was also with me for those 2 periods. He was sleeping for the first period, like the entirety of class. And I think by that point, Miss Helson kind of was just over his activities and kind of didn't really pay close attention to him. Since he was in the lower tables, even if he didn't do his work, it got to a point where the teacher just didn't care and didn't really spend any of her energy on him. But this also meant that Pete kind of got away with most things. So like the instance where he was asleep, pretty much fell asleep for the duration of the first period, and then Miss Helson didn't notice till the second class started, and by that point, you know, he was knocked out asleep. And so what Miss Helson ended up doing was she walked over to his desk and she picked up, I think it was like a dictionary or a hardcover textbook, and just slammed it on his desk, which like woke him up instantly. She ended up taking him back to her front desk, and while we were working our own work, she was kind of like talking to him. It was pretty short, I do recall that. It was a short conversation between them. She didn't yell at him, but he was kicked out of class. And so yeah, just basically going off from this story alone with Pete, you kind of get the vibe that she was a pretty shitty teacher, even if, you know, some of it was kind of warranted, especially with the kid. But even then, like, I don't know, she was very much a boomer teacher, especially in the way that she taught. And oh boy, the way she taught, just it was kind of dumb, because, you know, her class, the fact that we had to write in pen and in cursive, and she didn't even end up teaching a whole lot. Now that I remember, the majority of the class time was us taking out our textbook and us doing practice exercises from each chapter. Specifically for English, we would go through each chapter and, you know, practice verbs or adjectives or that sort of stuff. And she would never really give a proper lecture or like teach anything. Like, the only sort of teaching she would do is like if she noticed the entire class was kind of struggling with a certain subject, and she would actually teach it. But if she noticed half of the class was doing all right, she just didn't give a fuck and if the other kids were doing bad, then oh well, they can learn on their own. But, yeah, it's just horrible teaching. And I'm surprised I did okay because, I would say I learned by getting taught. I don't know how I managed. I think it's just the fact that I did the work and I didn't slack off. And so I think this brings me to another story of that involves one of my friends that I had in that class. And for this story, I'll call him Dill.
Fucking annoying drunk-ass alcoholic grandpa just went to Subway with me and the fucking card declined, so now we're at the fucking bank getting us a whole ass new card. Stupid fucking bitch can't even close a goddamn door!
No, Dill was a pretty chill dude. He was actually pretty smart. I don't get why this kid, he was, dude, this guy was intelligent. I remember him in elementary school, when we would do those practice exams for, I don't know what, but they were state exams or something like that. He would always score top of the class. He was smart. But for some reason, he just kind of got lazy or something and started to show, especially in that class where most of the work was busy work and he would stop doing it. Pretty much at that point, didn't really care. Towards the beginning of the school year, he would actually try. And I remember for our spelling bee, he actually managed to make it to be one of the contestants for the spelling bee, which goes to show just how smart he was. But yeah, he was just kind of lazy and never really bothered putting in any effort for the class when it was actually required. And so for the majority of the school year, he was in the higher tables, like I mentioned earlier. Just how the seating chart was, it relied on if you did the work or not. And so for the majority of the school year, he was in the upper tables, and the only reason why he was actually moved lower is because it got to a point where the teacher started to notice, Miss Helson started to notice that kids were showing work that was from a different chapter and kind of playing it off as if it was the work for that certain chapter that we were working on. And I'm surprised it took her that long to notice. But then again, she was almost 80, I believe. And so Dill wasn't very intelligent when it came to not putting in the effort into cheating or, being sneaky about it. And so he was caught pretty much showing old work and passing it off as new work. And it was not only him. Like I said, various other students were doing that sort of tactic. I was doing something similar where I was because there were different chapters that we were working on throughout the week, I would actually do a couple chapters, and then some chapters I would just steal from my previous work and kind of pass it off as that. And so I managed to get away with it, but there were various students that were even too fucking stupid to cheat correctly, and they pretty much were caught. So like I said, Dill and a bunch of other students, when they were caught, they were brought up to the front of the class, they got yelled at. A majority of them were from the upper table, surprisingly. So they were pretty much moved to the average tables or the lower tables. And because I was, I guess, the exception, and I was actually in the average tables at that point and I was doing my work, I actually took his spot. I took my friend Dill's spot, which was funny. And I remember after class, I was giving him so much shit about it. I remember talking so much shit. It was funny. And that's pretty much how it remained the rest of the school year, actually. Pretty much he stayed in the average or lower tables, and I stayed in the upper tables. And yeah, I'm never going to let that die down. I remember even when we were in high school, I would sometimes bring it up. Basically, from these stories alone, you can kind of get the vibe that Miss Helson was a pretty bitchy teacher. A horrible teacher at that, just by the way she taught her class. The lack of teaching. But to be honest, towards the end of the school year, she actually got a little bit more chill. I recall one instance where she would let us kind of have free days. Well, they were called free days, but we would still have to do some sort of work. But we had the option of listening to music with headphones or sit next to our friends and, chat. Yeah, chat, but still doing work, obviously. That was, I guess, the better days of her class. And something that I actually found out later on was another one of my friends actually had her for, I believe it was the later periods towards the end of the school day. And apparently she had mentioned to her other classes that my class specifically was her favorite. I guess just the fact that, I don't know, I guess most of us did the work, and just the fact that all except Pete would not give her a hard time. I'm pretty sure her other classes were worse or something. Because our class was her favorite, I remember one time there was a food truck at our school, and she pretty much let us cut to the front of the line. And what's funny is that there were already kids lining up for the food truck, and because she's a teacher, she did not give a fuck, and she just let us cut to the front of the line. Like, we just had VIP authority, like, just cut in front of them. And what's funny is that I believe they were like 7th or 8th, and we were, little 6th graders just cutting in front of them. Those were probably some of her highlights. I obviously have a lot more stories I could probably think of from her class. It's just I didn't really have time to think about much of them. But yeah, I guess the reason why I wanted to bring up that story was because I guess I just was feeling nostalgic about a much more simpler time, middle school. And I do look back on a lot of my middle school years and early high school, and just I noticed that I never really had besides Miss Helson, I never really had a terrible teacher experience where I hated the class. I mean, even her class, like, she was horrible, but I didn't hate her class. Like, most of it was just doing the busy work, and if you were doing that, you were pretty much fine for the rest of the class. Like, there wasn't much studying. We barely had any exams. We only had, I think, like 2 exams throughout the school year. Yeah, I've never really had a bad teacher experience. Like I said, I kind of just was feeling nostalgic about this story time specifically, and I would probably like to do more storytime videos about whether they were middle school. I feel like I have more middle school stories, to be honest, than high school, because my high school years were kind of stopped a bit early. COVID kind of hit during my junior year, so I pretty much lost like 2 years, well, a year and a half, because COVID hit like the middle of my junior year. So the rest of junior year was online, and my senior year was completely online. So yeah, I have a lot more middle school stories, a lot more embarrassing ones actually.
I wanted it to be you.
I kind of enjoyed telling that story time. I actually noticed I haven't really been paying attention to the game. I kind of just been doing whatever. I remember I was playing a couple days ago. I don't really play games too often, especially since, I'm in school and stuff. So yeah, when I do play games, I tend to play games that are like this, like kind of easy, not that much thought required, and something I could just play like in an hour and get over with. That's particularly why I don't really play shooter games. Actually, to be honest, like, I know that growing up we all have our sort of niche when it comes to gaming specifically. Like, there's people that like sports games and stuff like that. And I noticed, and I look back on the type of games that I played when I was younger, and I noticed that I wasn't like a hardcore gamer. And I think that just comes down to the fact that growing up I didn't have like an Xbox 360 when the Xbox 360 was still at its... I didn't have a PlayStation 3 when it was in its peak, so I never got to experience the COD lobbies, the Xbox Live party chats. I never got to quite experience that. I'm perfectly fine with it. I think I turned out alright. I'm not a big softie. Like, I've tried Call of Duty now. I've tried, talking on game chat and stuff, and I've done alright, so... But I do look back on the games that I used to play, and a lot of them were single-player, story-driven games. I remember playing Silent Hill, Resident Evil, stuff like that. Specifically on the PlayStation 2. Growing up, the only game console I had when I was, like, in middle school was a Wii U. Saying that out loud just shows how much of a loser I am, actually. The fact that my game console for the majority of my adolescence was a Wii U, that's gotta be embarrassing. And I didn't even play like mainstream Wii U games. Like, I didn't play Smash Bros. I didn't play Mario Kart. I played fucking Lego City Undercover, and what was it? I played Lego City Undercover. When I got the Wii U, I got it with Nintendo Land, so I played some of that. And then I played, obviously I had to get New Super Mario Bros. U. Oh, Need for Speed Most Wanted, the 2012 version. So yeah, I wasn't even like a hardcore gamer where, I needed the latest and greatest. Like, I didn't even get an Xbox One. So yeah, just, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I never considered myself a gamer. Obviously right now, like, maybe in high school, when I got into PC gaming, maybe I was slowly transitioning into a gamer, but even then I kind of stopped. Because for me, gaming is just like, it gets boring, it gets repetitive, especially with the games that I was playing when I did get into gaming PC, which were Call of Duty.
What the definition of insanity is? It's buying the same Call of Duty every year, expecting it to be different.
I tried getting into that, and I was never really a fan of first-person shooters. Maybe first-person survival shooters, so like the zombies mode in Call of Duty. I really enjoy that. I don't really like the multiplayer aspect of it. And then I played a lot of GTA, and I think I really did enjoy my time playing GTA online. When I did get into PC gaming, just because I like the open world aspect of it, and I like the fact that, you know, you create your sort of empire, I guess. Gaming for me now is just, I don't even have time for it. Like I mentioned earlier, just been busy with life in general, which is also the reason why I kind of stopped doing YouTube. Because the majority of my content was like getting gameplay and talking about a subject or something, I kind of just stopped doing that. Gaming now is hit or miss, especially with like the new games that are coming out. I mean, this is a problem with gaming now that a bunch of people are pointing out, and it's just the fact that gaming is so repetitive. And if it's not repetitive, it's just stale and boring. Specifically with like the Call of Duty genre or similar games. Oh god, we got this thing now. It's so big and black. I guess this part of the video is just gonna be me trying to see how long I can still survive. Which apparently I'm doing okay. The highest round I got was 94, so if I'm able to break that, that'll be pretty cool. But I doubt we're gonna do that, just because I am noticing I was towards this sort of, that is not kooky wacky fun. But we're doing alright. Dragon's Breath are pretty OP, so I guess just run that. Okay, so my highest round was 93, so I think once I break this, I think I'll hit 94 and maybe break my all-time record, I think. Oh jeez. And another thing about me recording this video right now is that I'm in my room with no AC. And so, it's the middle of summer.
No, she won't be gone forever.
It's, I want to say it's like 87. Definitely high 80s right now in my room, actually. So yeah. Oh, I think this is where we're done. I think we're done here, chat. Oh, we're cooked. We're actually cooked. Holy, we're cooked. We are cooked. There's no way I survive. Holy. Well, that's the end of the video.